The aspen sun was like liquid gold pouring over my head. I squinted, watching the maroon bells glitter against the high-altitude blue of the Colorado sky. "Hey, handsome, want a picture?" $10. A woman who looked like she'd been breathing mountain air her whole life waggled a digital camera at me. I stroked my chin. "Ma'am, does that price really do justice to this face? I'm thinking I'm at least a $20 man." She looked me up and down. "You've got the jawline, kid, I'll give you that. But the sun up here is no joke. Your skin's peeling. I'll give you a discount. 15. I was about to haggle when a dull thud sounded behind me. I turned to see a woman in a designer suit crumpled on the sidewalk, her face as pale as a ghost. "Whoa, altitude sickness got another one," the photographer exclaimed. I was there in 3 strides. The woman was maybe in her late 20s, her makeup flawless. Even unconscious, she radiated a "don't come near me" vibe. Her Birkin bag had fallen open beside her, revealing a neat array of cosmetics and a folder labeled Sinclair Corp acquisition proposal. "Ms. Sinclair?" Jenna, a young guy in a suit, sprinted across the street. I was just gone for a second to get some oxygen. I felt for her pulse and shot a look at the panicked assistant. "Don't just stand there. Help me get her into the shade." I pointed to a nearby convenience store. "Go buy a Gatorade." 10 minutes later, the woman stirred in my arms. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she opened a pair of eyes as sharp and dark as a cat's, clouded with a little confusion. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice like whiskey on the rocks. "Your knight in shining armor," I said with a grin. "Figured I'd see if you wanted to repay me with your hand in marriage." She tried to stand, but her legs gave out and she collapsed back against me. I caught a whiff of her perfume, something like cedar mixed with an expensive, unidentifiable flower. "Ms. Sinclair, are you okay?" The assistant rushed back, fumbling with a can of oxygen. "Useless," she snapped at him, then turned her gaze on me. "Earlier, thank you." I waved it off. "Don't mention it. I do charge, though. Saving a life? Call it 100 grand. Her eyes narrowed. She suddenly reached out and gripped my chin. "You've got a lot of nerve trying to shake down Jenna Sinclair." I finally noticed her nails, painted a dark blood red, like 10 tiny daggers. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Ow, ow, ow." I yelped. "Kidding. Just kidding. How about you just buy me dinner?" She let go and, to my surprise, she smiled. It was a look that sent a chill down my spine. 3 parts charm, 7 parts danger. "Fine," she said. "As it happens, I need a guide." And just like that, Ethan Hayes, a broke backpacker who'd planned to live on trail mix and cheap beer for a month, somehow became the personal tour guide for the CEO of Sinclair Corp. 3 days later, I was riding shotgun in Jenna Sinclair's G-Wagon on the way to Maroon Lake. She insisted on the best hotels, the most expensive restaurants. Even her portable oxygen cans looked like they were gold-plated. This whole 5-star approach is a desecration of the true Aspen experience, I said, munching on the elk jerky she'd bought. She was touching up her makeup, and her eyes flicked to me in the rearview mirror. "And what, in your expert opinion, is the true experience?" "You're supposed to stay in a hostel, eat from food trucks, hang out with locals around a bonfire, wrap yourself in a blanket, and watch the stars at midnight." I was on a roll. She snapped her compact shut. "Stop the car." The driver slammed on the brakes. Jenna grabbed my arm, hauled me out of the vehicle, and pointed to a ramshackle building with a faded hostel sign hanging precariously from its porch. "Go on, get us 2 rooms." "Il sera here, dumbfounded." "You're serious?" A corner of her mouth lifted. "Wasn't it you who was just talking about the authentic Aspen experience?" That night, we actually stayed in the hostel. Around midnight, a knock on my door startled me awake. I opened it to find Jenna standing there, wrapped in a blanket, her face pale in the dim hallway light. "I'm cold," she said, a rare note of vulnerability in her voice. I sighed and stepped aside to let her in. She went straight to my bed and curled up, wrapping herself into a tight cocoon. I was left to sit on the tiny wooden stool next to the bed. "Aren't you getting in?" she asked, her eyes peering out for the blanket burrito. "Ms. Sinclair, as much as I appreciate a good time, taking advantage of a damsel in distress is not my style." "Shut up," she cut me off. "I'm just cold. Don't make it weird." I shrugged and carefully lay down on the far edge of the mattress. On the narrow twin bed, we had a veritable DMZ between us. "Tell me a joke," she said suddenly. Huh, you seem like the kind of guy who's full of bad jokes. Tell me one. I thought for a second. Why is the Wi-Fi so bad in Aspen? Why? Because all the data is going downhill. She didn't laugh. Instead, she kicked me. That was terrible. You want to try telling one? She turned to face me, her eyes catching the moonlight streaming through the window. Ethan, why did you come to Aspen? I was quiet for a moment. Got dumped. Girlfriend left me for some bald millionaire. Said I was nothing but a pretty face. She reached out and gently touched my cheek. She wasn't wrong. You are pretty. I caught her hand. Jenna, you're giving me the wrong idea. She moved closer, her breath warm on my face. What idea is that? I swallowed hard. That you're about to make me an indecent proposal. She burst out laughing, a genuine, body-shaking laugh. Ethan, you're really something else. The next morning, I woke up to find Jenna wrapped around me like an octopus. I gently tried to move her arm, but she snapped awake, grabbing the collar of my shirt. Where are you going? She asked, her eyes sharp and alert. The bathroom, I said weakly. She let go, her ice queen composure snapping back into place. Phoenix. When I got back, she was already fully dressed with perfect makeup, on the phone tearing into some poor employee. She saw me, hung up, and tossed a set of clothes onto the bed. Change. We're going to the lake. I glanced at the tag. Tom Ford. This woman even bossed you around with luxury goods. By the shore of Maroon Lake, Jenna just stared out at the water. The sun cast a golden halo around her profile, making her look like a painting. You know, she said suddenly, my ex-husband proposed to me right here. I raised an eyebrow. Ix. He cheated. A cold smirk played on her lips. I took him for everything he was worth. I nearly neutered him. I instinctively crossed my legs. Damn, Jenna. She turned to look at me. Are you interested in being my daughter's father? I choked on my water, spraying it everywhere. What? Not biologically, she said, that dangerous smile returning. My daughter, Poppy, is 5. She needs a full-time manny. I wiped my mouth. Ms. Sinclair, while it's true that I'm handsome, witty, a fantastic cook, and great with kids, my services are not for sale. $20,000 a month, room and board included, she interrupted. But for a beautiful, generous woman such as yourself, I could be persuaded to make an exception. I finished, not missing a beat. She nodded, satisfied, then leaned in close. Ethan, from the moment you saved me, I decided you were the one. I took a step back. Is that a confession? She shook her head. It's a notification. On the way back to the Aspen airport, Jenna's phone rang. Her expression darkened instantly. After hanging up, she ordered the driver to head straight for the private terminal. There's a problem at the company, she said curtly. You're coming back to New York with me. My eyes widened. Hold on, I haven't even agreed to be a manny yet. She handed me a plane ticket. First class. If you don't come, I'll personally call every hotel and hostel owner in Aspen and tell them you're a con artist. I took the ticket. Jenna, this is basically kidnapping. She smiled. No, it's recruitment. On the plane, Jenna was buried in paperwork. I snuck a few glances. It seemed to be a crisis related to a major acquisition. Need any help? I asked. She didn't look up. What can you do? I can tell you jokes to cheer you up. She finally looked at me, her expression unreadable. Ethan, sometimes I just want to crack open your head and see what's inside besides bad jokes. I gave her a mysterious smile. A deep and abiding love for you, obviously. She rolled her eyes, but I saw the tips of her ears turn red. When we landed, Jenna's assistant was already waiting. He handed her a file and murmured something in her ear. Jenna's face turned to stone. What's wrong? I asked. She took a deep breath. A competitor just snagged our most important project. She paused, then looked directly at me. Ethan, you said you knew someone on the Aspen Tourism Board? I nodded. Yeah, I met this older guy at a bar, Rick Miller. We had a few beers. He's the deputy director of the Aspen Tourism Bureau. Jenna cut me off. I checked your Instagram right after you mentioned him. I scratched my head. Huh, old man Rick is a big shot. Jenna suddenly grabbed my hand, her grip tight. Get him on the phone for me. Now. The fire in her eyes was genuinely intimidating. Jenna, you're looking at me like you want to eat me alive. If you help me land this project, she leaned in, her warm breath ghosting across my ear, I'll raise your pay. I sighed dramatically. Ms. Sinclair. You're making this very difficult for me. 10 grand, she said. I'm not the kind of guy who can be bought. 20? Deal. That night, after a call I facilitated, Jenna and Rick Miller had a very productive dinner. As we celebrated, she kept kicking me under the table every time I made a joke, and it hurt like hell. On the way back to the hotel, Jenna was unusually quiet. It wasn't until we were in the elevator, just the two of us, that she suddenly hugged me, resting her head on my shoulder. Thank you, Ethan, she whispered. I froze. Jenna, what are you? Don't talk, she said, her arms tightening around me. Just for a second. When the elevator doors dinged open at the penthouse level, she pulled away, her mask of cool professionalism firmly back in place, as if that moment of vulnerability had never happened. 9 a.m. tomorrow. My house. You're meeting Poppy, she commanded. Don't be late. Jenna's townhouse was so massive the foyer alone was bigger than my entire apartment. The crystal chandelier made me dizzy, and the marble floor was so polished I was afraid I'd slip and break some priceless antique. Shoes off, Jenna ordered without looking back, her heels silent on the plush runner. As I bent down to untie my laces, I heard the rapid pitter-patter of small feet. A little girl with pigtails shot down the stairs like a cannonball and launched herself into Jenna's arms. Mommy, the girl cried, her face tilted up, her eyes shining like stars. Jenna's expression melted, all her sharp edges softening as she scooped up the little girl. Poppy, did you miss me? Yes, Poppy answered loudly. Then her curious gaze landed on me. Who's that man? I made a goofy face at her. I'm your new dad. Poppy's eyes went wide. She turned back to Jenna. Mommy, is that true? Jenna shot me a death glare. Ethan, if you say one more stupid thing, I will personally throw you off that balcony. I held up my hands in surrender. Just a joke. I'm the nanny your mom hired. He's a life assistant, Jenna corrected. He's here to play with you, tell you stories, and take you to and from school. Poppy tilted her head, sizing me up. Do you know stories about dinosaurs? Do I ever? I crouched down to her level. I don't just tell them, I act them out. The T-Rex walks like this. I hunched over, holding my hands up like tiny claws, and let out a low growl. Poppy giggled and scampered away. I want to see a triceratops. Here comes the triceratops. I chased her around the living room, deliberately running clumsily so she could easily dodge me. Leaning against the banister, Jenna watched us, a small, genuine smile playing on her lips. The sunlight, streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, bathed her in a golden light. For a second, she was breathtakingly beautiful. After half an hour of chaos, Poppy was exhausted, flopped on the sofa like a limp noodle. I sat on the carpet, breathing heavily, the back of my shirt soaked with sweat. You've got good stamina, Jenna said, handing me a glass of water. I made the right choice. I took the glass, my fingers accidentally brushing against hers. They were ice cold. Is that a compliment, Miss Sinclair? She didn't answer, turning to head upstairs. Get Poppy bathed and put her to bed. You'll take her to preschool at 7 tomorrow morning. Wait, I called after her. Where am I sleeping? She paused and looked back, a smirk on her red lips. With Poppy, of course. There's a sofa bed in the nursery. My jaw dropped. You can't be serious. 20 grand a month for me to be a 24/7 live-in nanny. 30, she said. Starting tomorrow. I immediately shut my mouth. 30 grand a month was enough to live like a king for a year. The nursery was more like a princess's castle than a kid's room. Poppy was already in her pajamas, waiting for me with a picture book. Story time, mister, she said, patting the spot on the bed next to her. I took the book. It was The Little Prince. You could just call me Ethan. Ethan, mister, she corrected stubbornly. Can you sing a lullaby? I cleared my throat and began to sing softly. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Poppy leaned against my shoulder, her eyelids getting heavy. Her hair smelled sweet, like milk, and her little face was soft and warm. I suddenly understood why people willingly signed up for parenthood. By the third time through, Poppy was fast asleep. I gently laid her down and tucked her in. As I was about to head for the sofa bed, the door creaked open. Jenna was standing there, wearing a silk robe, her hair down and softer than I'd ever seen it. Is she asleep? She whispered. I nodded and tiptoed out of the room, closing the door softly behind me. Good work, Jenna said, handing me a binder. This is Poppy's daily schedule, dietary restrictions, and all the school information. From now on, your phone stays on 24/7. I flipped through the binder. The color-coded, minute-by-minute schedule made my head spin. Jenna, are you raising a kid or training a Navy SEAL? Her eyes narrowed. Is there a problem? Yes, I said, closing the binder. Kids need time to play, time to be bored, time to do things that aren't on a spreadsheet. Jenna crossed her arms, studying me. And you're a parenting expert? I'm a childhood expert, I said, pointing to myself. And when I was a kid, the one thing I hated most was having my whole life planned out. Kids aren't projects, Jenna. She was silent for a moment. So what do you suggest? 2 hours of free time every day after school. She does what she wants, or does nothing at all. Jenna seemed to be considering it. We could try it. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and there's a parent-teacher conference tomorrow. You're going. My eyes widened. It's my first day. Exactly, she said without looking back. Go get the lay of the land. The next morning, I was woken up by Poppy bouncing on my stomach, my hair a complete disaster. Ethan, mister, get up, she chirped. We're going to be late. I groaned and fumbled for my phone. 6:30. Your mother is a demon, I muttered, dragging myself out of bed. Dressing Poppy was a battle. She insisted on a dinosaur t-shirt paired with a tutu, and her hair had to be braided just like Elsa. After half an hour of wrestling with clothes and hair ties, the result was acceptable. In the kitchen, the housekeeper had breakfast ready. As Poppy ate her eggs, she asked, Ethan, mister, are you going to stay with me forever? I paused, my knife hovering over a piece of toast. Well, that depends on whether your mom keeps paying me. Poppy's face fell. Mommy's other assistants never last long. Why not? Mommy says they're not good enough, Poppy said, chewing on her fork. But I think it's because they can't handle her when she's mad. I almost choked on my coffee. Your mom does have a bit of a temper. You're not scared of her? Poppy asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. I leaned in and whispered, I'll tell you a secret. When your mom gets angry, she's just a paper tiger. What's a paper tiger? It means she looks scary, but really what? A cold voice asked from behind me. I froze, then slowly turned around. Jenna was standing there, dressed in a sharp business suit, her red lips pressed into a thin line. Really, she's incredibly powerful, I said with a strained laugh. Right, Poppy? Poppy looked from me to her mom, then announced, Mommy, I like Ethan, mister. Can he stay? A subtle change flickered across Jenna's face. We'll see how he performs. On the way to preschool, Poppy was a chatterbox, telling me which teacher was the meanest and which kid always stole the best toys. I mentally filed away the intel, prepping for the conference. The preschool was even fancier than I'd imagined, with a line of luxury cars idling at the curb. In my nicest shirt and jeans, I looked like a delivery guy who'd wandered into a country club. And you are? The teacher asked, looking at the sign-in sheet with a puzzled expression. I'm Poppy's. Father, I blurted out. It felt less weird than saying I was the nanny. The teacher's eyes lit up with understanding. Oh, you must be Ms. Sinclair's new husband. I nearly swallowed my tongue. No, I'm her life assistant. The teacher's expression instantly soured. I see. Well, please have a seat in the back. Once the conference started, I understood why Jenna had sent me. Poppy was apparently a problem child. She didn't like to share, was disruptive during nap time, and had dismantled another boy's toy dinosaur. Poppy is a very bright child, but she lacks a certain respect for the rules, the teacher said delicately. We hope her parents can work with us on this. Other parents shot me pitying looks. I heard someone whisper, it's always a nanny. That Jenna Sinclair never cares about her own kid. Something inside me snapped. I stood up. Excuse me. I'm Ethan Hayes, Poppy's proxy parent. And regarding Poppy's problems, I have a few thoughts. The room fell silent. Even the teacher looked stunned. First, not wanting to share isn't a flaw. It's the development of self-awareness. Second, being disruptive at nap time means she has a lot of energy, which should be channeled into more outdoor activities. And third, taking apart a toy shows curiosity. I used to take everything apart as a kid, and now I'm a mechanical engineer. The silence in the classroom was absolute. I pressed on. Of course, we will work with the school to guide Poppy, but please, let's not crush the positive aspects of these traits in the process. After the meeting, several parents came up to ask for my contact information, telling me how refreshing my perspective was. The teacher looked at me with newfound respect. You're far more professional than the last few assistants. I just smiled modestly, feeling pretty damn good about myself. Maybe I was cut out for this Manny thing after all. Why pick Poppy up? She asked nervously. Did the teacher say bad things about me? I crouched down to her level. The teacher said you were the smartest kid in the whole class. Her eyes lit up. Really? Really? But I lowered my voice to a whisper. She said your technique for taking apart toys wasn't very professional. Next time, I'll teach you some more advanced methods. Poppy cheered and threw her arms around my neck. Ethan Mister is the best. In the car on the way home, Poppy suddenly said, Ethan Mister, can you be my dad? My hands jerked on the steering wheel. That's a question for your mom. Mommy said it's okay, Poppy said seriously. She said it's fine as long as you agree. I nearly drove the car onto the sidewalk. What the hell was Jenna playing at? Was this a test? A game? Or could she actually be interested in me? That evening, after putting Poppy to bed, I found Jenna working in her home office. I knocked on the doorframe. Got a minute? She didn't look up from her laptop. Speak. Poppy told me today that you want me to be your father. Jenna's fingers stilled on the keyboard. She finally looked up. She said that. I nodded, watching her reaction closely. The tips of her ears seemed a little red, but her expression remained cool. Kids say silly things, she said, turning back to her computer. Don't take it seriously. I walked further into the room, leaning my hands on her desk. Jenna, let's cut the crap. You hired me for an insane amount of money. Is it really just to be a nanny? She closed her laptop and met my gaze. What else would it be? I thought. I leaned closer to her, that you might have other, less professional intentions. Jenna suddenly smiled that dangerous, captivating smile of hers. Ethan, you're handsome, but you're not handsome enough to make me lose my mind. Then why me? I pressed. And don't say it's because I saved you in Aspen. You could have hired anyone, but you latched onto me. She was quiet for a moment, then pulled a file from a drawer and pushed it across the desk toward me. See for yourself. I opened it and froze. It was a complete background check on me. My college major, my work history, even information about my ex-girlfriend. It was all there. You investigated me? I said, disbelief in my voice. Of course, Jenna said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Did you really think I'd let a stranger near my daughter? I scanned a report and saw two things highlighted. My degree in mechanical engineering and a certificate in child psychology, something I'd gotten on a whim in college that almost no one knew about. I needed someone who could not only play with Poppy, but also teach her, Jenna said. You happen to be a perfect fit. I closed the file, a complicated mix of feelings swirling inside me. So, it was all just a calculation? She stood up and walked around the desk to stand in front of me. Not entirely. She reached up and straightened the collar of my shirt, her touch surprisingly gentle. That day in Aspen, I admit I was intrigued. My heart skipped a beat. And now, she suddenly gripped my collar, pulling me closer. Now, you'd better focus on your job, Ethan Mister. Her breath was on my face, smelling faintly of red wine. Our lips were inches apart, suspended in a dangerous, charged space. Jenna, is this considered workplace harassment? I asked, my voice hoarse. She let me go and turned toward the door. Go to bed. You have to take Poppy to school in the morning. At the door, she stopped. By the way, my ex-husband is coming to visit Poppy next week. Be prepared. Ist der Herr, Stund. Ex-husband. What? Wasn't that in your file? She asked, looking back at me. I've been divorced for 3 years. Poppy's biological father is coming to see her. And with that, she swept out of the room, leaving me alone in her office, my world completely upended. The news about the ex-husband landed like a stone in my gut. I couldn't sleep. I ended up studying the file Jenna had left on him. Preston Vanderbilt, 35, a Wall Street shark, now the CEO of the North American division for some multinational cosmetics giant. The man in the photo wore a bespoke suit and gold-rimmed glasses, his eyes as cold and precise as a calculator. Looks like a real piece of work, I muttered, tossing the file aside. Just then, one of Poppy's dinosaur toys hit me in the face. Ethan Mister, Poppy said, rubbing her eyes as she sat up in her little bed. I had a dream that Daddy turned into a T-Rex. My heart clenched. You remember what your dad looks like. Mommy, show me a picture, she said, tilting her head. She said Daddy is very busy. That's why he can't come see me. A lump formed in my throat. Jenna was actually making excuses for the jerk who walked out on them. I was about to say something when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jenna. Preston changed his flight. He lands at 3 p.m. today. Take Poppy to Disneyland. Keep her away from him. I stared at the screen and scoffed. Hide? No way. I was going to meet this guy head on. At 2:45 that afternoon, I was sitting with Poppy on a plush sofa in the lobby of Sinclair Corp. Poppy, dressed in her Elsa gown, swung her little legs back and forth. Mister, I thought we were going to Disneyland. We're playing a game first? I whispered. In a minute, a man with glasses is going to come in. I wanted to call him Daddy, okay? Poppy's eyes lit up. Is it like hide and seek? Exactly, I said, pinching her cheek. But for grown-ups. At precisely 3 o'clock, a tall figure emerged from the revolving doors. Preston Vanderbilt had even more of an intimidating presence than his photo suggested. His custom suit fit him perfectly, and a wedding ring gleamed on his left hand. His eyes scanned the lobby and locked onto me and Poppy. Poppy, he asked, crouching down, his voice artificially soft. I'm your father. Poppy blinked, then turned to me. Ethan, mister, is this the bad guy? Preston's smile froze on his face. I stifled a laugh. She's just a little shy around strangers. You can't blame her, mister. Vanderbilt, it has been 5 years. He stood up, his eyes boring into me from behind his glasses. And you are? Ethan Hayes, Poppy's current father, I said, extending a hand. Didn't Jenna tell you? He ignored my outstretched hand and turned to the receptionist. I have an appointment with Ms. Sinclair. The young woman at the desk trembled. Ms. Sinclair is waiting for you on the 28th floor. The moment the elevator doors closed, I sent a text to Jenna. Your ex has terrible taste. That Hermes tie is definitely a knockoff. She replied instantly. Don't cause trouble. Take Poppy home. I was about to text back when Poppy tugged on my sleeve. Mister, that lady keeps looking at you. I followed her gaze to a corner of the lobby where a woman in dark sunglasses was talking on her phone, though her eyes were glued to me. The second she saw me notice her, she turned and walked away. Weird, I muttered, scooping Poppy up. Come on, kiddo. Let's go get some ice cream. We had just stepped out of the building when a black Mercedes pulled up, blocking our path. The window rolled down, and Preston's assistant leaned out. Mister, Vanderbilt asked me to escort Miss Poppy home. I held Poppy tighter. Thanks, but we have our own car. Mr. Hayes, the assistant said, his voice low and threatening. Mr. Vanderbilt said that if you insist on involving yourself in his family affairs, he wouldn't mind digging into your past. My eyes narrowed. A threat? Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Jenna's executive assistant. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Sinclair needs you back in the office immediately. There's been an incident. The atmosphere in Jenna's conference room was thick with tension. The large screen on the wall showed a stock chart, with Sinclair Corp's share price in a nosedive, down 15%. Someone's shorting our stock, Jenna said, her fingernails tapping a sharp rhythm on the table. At the same time, a story about a product quality scandal just broke, and 3 of our major partners have terminated their contracts. The executives exchanged nervous glances. I stood in the corner, holding Poppy, and noticed Jenna's eyes kept flicking toward Preston. He was calmly sipping a cup of coffee, looking like a casual observer. Ms. Sinclair, the CFO, said, wiping sweat from his brow, if we can't find the capital to cover the buyback by tomorrow. I'll handle it, Jenna interrupted him. Meeting adjourned. After the room cleared, Preston finally spoke. Need some help, Jenna? That name coming from him made my jaw ache. Jenna gave a cold laugh. Was this your doing? I don't have that kind of power, Preston said, adjusting his glasses. However, I might know who's behind it. He glanced meaningfully at Poppy, who was now in my arms. 8 o'clock tonight. The plaza. Just the 2 of us. Before Jenna could refuse, I cut in. Sure, why not? I'll come with you. Preston chuckled. I'm afraid that won't be possible. We'll be discussing certain business secrets. He looked at me pointedly. This gentleman doesn't seem to be on your board of directors. He's with me, Jenna said, suddenly linking her arm through mine. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of him. Preston's expression flickered for a second before he regained his composure. Very well. I'll see you both tonight. The moment he was gone, Jenna pulled her arm away. Are you insane? What good does antagonizing him do? Don't you think it's a little too convenient? I said in a low voice. Your ex-husband shows up, and your company suddenly implodes? Jenna rubbed her temples. I know him better than you do. Preston never makes a move unless he's certain of the outcome. He's back for one reason. She looked at Poppy, who was now engrossed in a game on my phone. He's here for our daughter. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? His new wife can't have children, Jenna said with a bitter smile. So he suddenly remembered he had a daughter of his own. At 7 that evening, just after the nanny had picked up Poppy, Jenna got an urgent call. The company's main warehouse was on fire. Pull the security footage. Now, she roared into the phone, her knuckles white. I silently draped my jacket over her shoulders. Are we still going to dinner? Yes, she said, her eyes like ice. I want to see how long he can keep up this act. In a private dining room at the plaza, Preston was already waiting. On the table was a platter of bluefin tuna sashimi, Jenna's favorite, and a bottle of her preferred champagne chilling in an ice bucket. I was so sorry to hear about the warehouse, he said with false sincerity. If you need any connections at the fire department, I can help. Jenna didn't touch her chopsticks. Cut the crap, Preston. What are your terms? He leisurely poured a glass of champagne. You have two options. 1. You give me full custody of Poppy, and I'll inject $500 million into your company. I nearly flipped the table. You gotta be kidding me. 2. He continued, ignoring my outburst. You marry the man I recommend. We'll split the company's shares, and we'll raise Poppy together. Jenna laughed. Do you really think I'm the same naive woman you married 5 years ago? Of course not, Preston said. Then his eyes shifted to me. That's why I had to test your weaknesses. He took out his phone and played a recording of my conversation with Poppy from that afternoon. Ethan, mister, is this the bad guy? Poppy's innocent voice was jarring. Preston stopped the recording. Teaching a child to see her own father as a villain. I could sue you for parental alienation. A cold sweat broke out on my back. The bastard had recorded us. And there's more, Preston said, pulling up a security video. It showed the woman in sunglasses from the lobby injecting some kind of liquid into Sinclair Core products on a store shelf. My assistant just happened to catch this, he said, adjusting his glasses. And this woman appears to be Chloe Vance, the daughter of Chairman Vance. Jenna's face went white. Vance was our biggest supplier. Coincidentally, Ms. Vance has been spending a lot of time at a bar called the Mechanic's Shop, Preston said, looking pointedly at me. And Mr. Hayes here seems to be irregular. I felt like I'd been plunged into ice water. My friend owned that bar. I just helped out sometimes. How could you have dug up that much dirt so quickly? What are you implying? Jenna's sharp gaze turned to me. Preston just smiled. Nothing. I'm just curious as to why Mr. Hayes so coincidentally appeared in Aspen and so coincidentally saved you. The door to the dining room was suddenly thrown open. Poppy ran in, her face flushed. Mommy, the preschool is on fire. All three of us jumped to our feet. The nanny rushed in behind her, out of breath. Ms. Sinclair, the school just called. There was a small electrical short. Everyone is fine. Preston frowned. What is Poppy doing here? I told my assistant. I had your assistant. Detained on his way here, I said with a cold smile. By the way, that listening app on his phone works great. For the first time, Preston's composure cracked. Jenna scooped up Poppy and headed for the door. The game is over, Preston. If you ever try to touch Poppy again, I will ruin you. In the car on the way home, Poppy was asleep in her car seat. Jenna stared out the window for a long time before she spoke. That business with Chloe Vance. Is there anything you want to tell me? I gave a bitter laugh. If I told you I was just working at that bar to pay off some debts, would you believe me? No, she said, turning to look at me, her expression unreadable. But I know you're not who Preston says you are. A warmth spread through my chest. I was about to speak when she added, because if you were really that manipulative, you wouldn't have been stupid enough to brag about your engineering degree at a parent-teacher conference. I was speechless. This woman, had she been having me watch this whole time? So, she said, her eyes narrowing, how much debt are you in? 50,000, I admitted. My ex-girlfriend took off with it. Jenna actually smiled. We'll deduct it from your salary. She leaned back in her seat. Starting tomorrow, you are officially my special assistant. Your new salary is 50,000 a month. My eyes widened. Why? First, you're shameless enough to deal with Preston, she said, ticking off the reasons on her fingers. Second, Poppy adores you. And third, she paused. I'm used to having you around. In the darkness of the car, the sharp lines of her face seemed to soften. On impulse, I reached out and brushed my fingers against hers. She didn't pull away. At 3 a.m, Jenna's townhouse was still ablaze with light. When I pushed open the study door with a mug of hot cocoa, she was scowling at her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard in a furious rhythm. The blue light from the screen illuminated her pale face and the dark circles under her eyes. Drink this, I said, pushing the mug toward her. You're going to work yourself to death, Jenna. She didn't look up. The damage report from the warehouse just came in. They destroyed our entire first batch of a new serum. $23 million worth. I let out a low whistle. Preston doesn't mess around. It wasn't him, she said, finally looking up, a dangerous fire in her eyes. It was Chloe Vance. The security footage shows her injecting the samples with hydrochloric acid. My stomach tightened. That quiet, sad girl I met at the bar was a corporate spy. I swear, I barely know her. We talked twice. I know, Jenna said with a cold smile. She targeted you because you mentioned you were a mechanical engineer. They want to steal our patent for the vacuum sealing technology. She played a recording. Chloe's sweet voice filled the room. Ethan, I heard you're great with mechanical design. My company has this piece of equipment that keeps breaking down. A chill went down my spine. That whole conversation had been set up. Jenna suddenly grabbed my hand, her nails digging into my skin. From now on, you don't leave my side. 24/7, especially when Preston is around. Is that jealousy or a new security protocol? I tried to lighten the mood. It's business strategy, she said, letting go and pulling a contract out of a drawer. Sign it. $300,000 a year, plus an NDA and a non-compete. I glanced at the terms. Employee must unconditionally cooperate with all of the employer's business activities, including but not limited to posing as a spouse. I looked up at her. Jenna, are you hiring an assistant or a husband? Her red lips curved into a smirk. Are you signing or not? Just as my pen hit the paper, Poppy appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, I dreamed that Daddy turned into a fire-breathing dragon. Jenna's expression melted instantly. She scooped Poppy up, her voice soft and gentle, a complete transformation from the woman she'd been seconds before. Go back to sleep, sweetie. Mommy's right here. Watching the two of them, their cheeks pressed together, I suddenly understood Preston's obsession. It was a perfect picture, so perfect it made you want to destroy it. The next morning, I was jolted awake by the doorbell. I opened the door, my hair a mess, to find Preston's assistant holding a bouquet of white roses. Mr. Vanderbilt requests Ms. Sinclair's presence for dinner tonight. 7 o'clock, the terrace at 18. I was about to tell him where he could stick his roses when Jenna's voice came from behind me. Tell him I'll be there. With my fiancé. After the assistant left, looking bewildered, I turned to her. Fiancé, isn't that taking things a little too far? She reached up and straightened my collar. Clause 3 of your contract. Unconditional cooperation. Her fingers paused as they brushed against my throat. Go buy a suit today. Use my card. Jenna, I said, catching her wrist. Are you sure this is just an act? She leaned in, her breath cool and minty. Don't flatter yourself, Ethan. Her lips were almost touching my ear. You're just a pawn. The shopping trip that afternoon was a surreal experience. Jenna insisted on picking out my suit herself, only to corner me in the fitting room. Chloe Vance just texted you again. I struggled to get my phone out. Sure enough, 2 unread messages from an unknown number. Ethan, can we meet? It's about a secret at Sinclair Corp. You're monitoring my phone? Hier. She smiled faintly. Just a location tracker. Text her back. Tell her you'll meet her tomorrow afternoon. 3 o'clock at the Green Sanctuary. You're setting up a sting? No, she said, her fingernails tracing my collarbone. I'm making an example of her. Dinner that night was even stranger than I'd anticipated. Preston had booked the entire rooftop restaurant, but had only set the table for 2. When he saw me, his pupils contracted behind his glasses. An extra guest, he said, signaling for a waiter to add a chair. It seems Jenna hasn't changed. Still always brings a backup. Jenna tightened her grip on my arm. Preston, I'd like you to meet my fiancé, Ethan. She practically spat the word fiancé. Preston actually laughed. Interesting. 5 years ago, you told me you hated slick, fast-talking men. He turned to me. Do you know why she divorced me? Because for her birthday, I bought her a penthouse, and she wanted a diamond. Shut up. Preston, Jenna hissed, her fingers digging into my arm. It took me years to understand, he continued, leisurely cutting his steak. She doesn't want things. She wants absolute control. He looked up at me. For example, I'm sure she has some kind of spyware installed on your phone right now. A cold sweat trickled down my back. How did this guy know everything? Get to the point, Jenna said, her voice like ice. What will it take for you to stop? Preston pushed a file across the table. It's simple. Give me custody of Poppy, and I'll give you a $500 million bailout and tell you who's really pulling the strings. I shot to my feet. You wish. Sit down, Jenna said, tugging on my sleeve. He's just trying to provoke you. She looked directly at Preston. You think burning my warehouse and shorting my stock is enough to make me give in? Preston shook his head. Jenna, you still don't get it. The person behind Chloe is with L Group. They don't just want your patent. They want all of Sinclair Corp. He gave me a meaningful look. And this Mr. Hayes just happens to be the former college roommate of L Group's heir. It felt like I'd been struck by lightning. Connor, the rich kid who lived across the hall from me in the dorms, was the mastermind? The ride back to the townhouse was silent. It wasn't until we were in the garage that she finally spoke. Explain. I gave a tired laugh. My college roommate, Connor Croft, yeah, he used to brag about his family's cosmetics business. But I dropped out and lost touch with him years ago. I swear, I had no idea he was with L Group. Jenna, I had no idea he was with L Group. It doesn't matter now, she said, suddenly leaning over and resting her forehead on my shoulder. I'm so tired. This rare display of vulnerability made my heart stumble. After a moment's hesitation, I gently put my arm around her. I'm here. She immediately pushed me away. Don't misunderstand. That was just a tactical display of weakness. But under the dim garage lights, I saw her ears turn bright red. The next day, the sting went off as planned. I sat in the green sanctuary waiting for Chloe, while Jenna listened in from the next table. When Chloe tearfully admitted that Connor Croft had manipulated her, Jenna appeared, throwing a stack of photos on the table, surveillance stills of Chloe injecting the products. You have a choice, Jenna said, her voice cold enough to freeze water. Either you cooperate with me to take down L Group, or you go to prison for corporate sabotage. After a trembling Chloe signed a confession, Jenna dragged me straight to L Group's headquarters. At the reception desk, she did something that left me speechless. She pulled me in and kissed me, right there in the middle of the lobby. Remember that feeling, she whispered as she pulled away. Try to be convincing. When Connor Croft saw me, he nearly dropped his coffee. Ethan, what are you? He's my fiancé, Jenna said, flashing a diamond ring that I had no idea she owned. I hear you're interested in acquiring my company. Connor looked like he'd swallowed a bug. You got married just to spite Preston? No, to spite you, Jenna said coldly, and to inform you that Chloe Vance has confessed everything. The SEC will be investigating L Group for stock manipulation first thing tomorrow morning. As we were leaving, Connor grabbed my arm in the elevator lobby. Ethan, she's just using you. Didn't Preston tell you? She's broken. She doesn't know how to love. I punched him. As his nose started to bleed, I realized with a jolt that I was in way too deep. That night, Jenna actually cooked dinner. The pasta tasted like rubber, but I ate every bite. Why are you helping me? She asked suddenly. You could have taken a payout from Connor. I wiped my mouth. Hey, 300 grand a year is hard to walk away from. She just stared at me for a long time, then said, Poppy wants you to go with her to the school's parent-child field day. As who? As her dad, she said softly. She insists on having Daddy Ethan there. A lump formed in my throat. Before I could answer, her phone rang. She took the call, and her face fell. Preston has officially filed for custody. I gripped my fork. Can he win? Not if we can prove we provide a stable, two-parent home, she said, looking at me meaningfully. For example, by getting married as soon as possible. My fork clattered onto my plate. This woman, was this real, or was it just another calculated move? I couldn't sleep that night. My phone lit up with a text from Jenna. Balcony. Now, in the moonlight, she was wearing her silk robe, swirling a glass of red wine. Care to look at the stars? I looked up. With New York's light pollution, you couldn't see a thing, but I nodded anyway. I met Preston at an observatory, she said out of nowhere. He told me my eyes were like Rigel, cold, but brilliant. I snorted. Cheesy. She gave a small laugh. I found out later he was only interested in me because Sinclair Corp had a tech patent he wanted. The wine swirled in her glass. Ethan, why do you never ask about my past? I'm waiting for you to want to tell me, I said, taking the glass from her. I've got time. She stepped closer, the scent of wine on her breath. The contract doesn't say you have to stargaze with the boss. It doesn't say I can't either, I murmured, leaning down, our breaths mingling. Just as our lips were about to touch, Poppy's cry echoed from her bedroom. Jenna flinched back as if she'd been burned. I should go check on her. Watching her hurry away, I licked my lips. The wine was sweet, but not as intoxicating as the panic I'd just seen in her eyes. The next morning, I was frying eggs when Jenna came into the kitchen, already dressed in a sharp power suit. We're going to get our marriage license today. The spatula slipped from my hand. What? It's a fake out, she said, her face unreadable. To deal with the custody suit. Our assets are already firewalled in a prenup. You won't get a dime when we divorce. I turned off the stove. Jenna, that's not how you propose. Oh, and how should I do it? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Get on one knee. I pinned her against the refrigerator, my hand flat against her chest, feeling her heart hammer against my palm. You could start by admitting you actually like me a little. Her eyelashes fluttered. You're delusional. You're a terrible liar, I whispered, leaning in. Last chance. Will you marry me? Yes, she said, suddenly tilting her head up and kissing me. But you have to promise to tell Poppy a dinosaur story every night. I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her tight. Deal, Mrs. Sinclair to be. The ink on the marriage certificate was still wet, and I was already having second thoughts. Outside City Hall, Jenna stuffed the certificate into her Birkin bag with the same finality she'd used to shred a hostile takeover bid. Remember, this is a business arrangement, she said in a low voice. You need to make it look convincing whenever Preston's around. I loosened my tie. Jenna, if you don't win an Oscar for that performance in there, you were robbed. The way she'd leaned her head on my shoulder for the photo. She looked like a woman completely, utterly in love. Poppy launched herself at me from the nanny's arms, her face flushed with excitement. Daddy Ethan, are we a real family now? I crouched down to her level. We sure are. Now I can officially tell you dinosaur stories whenever I want. Yay. She hugged my neck, then whispered in my ear, Mommy tried on 3 wedding dresses last night. Jenna's ears turned crimson. Poppy Sinclair. In the car, Jenna's phone wouldn't stop ringing. After the 5th call, she rubbed her temples wearily. L Group reported us to the SEC for financial fraud. Connor's revenge? I asked, gripping the steering wheel. It's more than that, she said, pulling up an email. Preston just bought 5% of Sinclair Corp stock. He's now our 5th largest shareholder. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screaming. Where did he get that kind of cash? He leveraged his stock options at L Group, Jenna said with a cold smile. He's really going all in to get Poppy. From the back seat, Poppy's small voice piped up. Is Daddy going to take me away? The car went silent. I saw in the rearview mirror that Jenna's hand was clenched into a fist, her knuckles white. No, he's not, I said, reaching back and covering her hand with mine. No one's going to break up the 3 of us. The words came out so naturally they surprised even me. The 3 of us. When had I started thinking of us as a unit? Jenna's hand trembled under mine, but she didn't pull it away. That night, the townhouse was a hive of activity. Lawyers shuffled in and out of the study while I sat in the living room with a sleeping Poppy in my arms, feeling like an outsider. At 2 in the morning, the last lawyer finally left. Jenna collapsed onto the sofa, kicking off her heels. Are we going to lose? I asked, handing her a glass of warm milk. She didn't take it. Instead, she grabbed my wrist. Ethan, I need you to do something for me. Tax evasion is a no. Murder is a maybe. I need you to get close to Chloe Vance, she said, her eyes glinting. Her father has the evidence that proves L Group cooked their books. I yanked my hand back. You want me to seduce her? 30,000, she said, holding up a finger. As a bonus. Do I look like the kind of guy who sells his body for money? 50. Deal. A triumphant smile crossed her face. She pulled a black Amex from her purse. Go buy some decent clothes tomorrow. I picked up the card and leaned in close. Shouldn't you come with me, honey? Help your husband pick out an outfit. She smacked my face away playfully. Don't get too into character. But as she turned, I saw the corner of her mouth twitch into a smile. The next day, I ran into Chloe at the Green Sanctuary. She looked worse than before, with dark circles under her eyes. Ethan, she said, her voice trembling. L Group has my father. They're holding him hostage. My heart pounded. This was the opposite of what Jenna had told me. Chloe shoved a USB drive into my hand. This has proof that Connor and Preston are working together. Please, you have to help my father. As I reached for the drive, I saw a reflection in the window. Someone was taking pictures. In a split second, I pulled Chloe into a hug, angling our bodies to make it look like a passionate kiss. Play along, I whispered. You're being watched. Chloe froze, then burst into tears, burying her face in my shoulder. It was a convincing performance. As soon as I left, I tried to call Jenna, but it went straight to voicemail. That was odd. She never turned off her phone. Back at the office, her assistant told me she'd gone to meet Preston. A sense of dread washed over me. I raced to his private club. I found him in a private room. When I burst in, I heard Preston say, "Just sign over the vacuum seal patent, and I'll drop the lawsuit." A document lay on the table in front of Jenna. A pen was poised over the signature line, her hand shaking slightly. "Don't sign it." I lunged for the document. Chloe gave me this. I held up the USB drive. It's proof they're working together. Preston's face darkened. Security. Two huge guys grabbed me. But Jenna shot to her feet and stomped her stiletto heel down hard on one of their feet. As he yelped and loosened his grip, she grabbed my arm and we ran. "The car's at the back entrance," she yelled, her hair flying behind her. It was like a scene from an action movie. We scrambled down a fire escape, hid in a dumpster to avoid security, and finally jumped into the sports car she'd left parked in the alley. As the engine roared to life, I gasped for breath. "You knew it was a setup?" "Of course," she said, expertly navigating the narrow alley. "Did you really think I would sign that?" "Then why?" "For this." She pulled a tiny recording device from her bra. Preston, on tape, admitting his partnership with L Group. "Esther de Hair. You had this planned all along." "Naturally," she said with a smug quirk of her eyebrow. "I just didn't expect you to come bursting in to play the hero." I let out a laugh that was half exasperation, half admiration. "Jenna, your scheming is on another level." "Oomph." She leaned across the console and kissed me. It was sudden and fierce, tasting of mint and the faint, metallic tang of blood where she'd bitten her lip during our escape. "Your reward," she said, slightly breathless, "for a stellar performance." I touched my lips. "I don't think this was in the contract." "We'll add a new clause," she said, her ears glowing red as she put the car in drive. "We can sign it when we get home." That night, after Poppy was asleep, Jenna was in her study, listening to the recording on a loop. When I came in with 2 glasses of wine, she was staring blankly at her computer screen. "Find anything?" I asked. She pulled up a financial statement. "Preston's ownership percentage in L Group is off. Based on these numbers, there's no way he could have leveraged that many options." I leaned over her shoulder, and a familiar name on a list of wire transfers caught my eye. Connor Croft's private account had been making regular, massive payments to a Julian Croft. Julian Croft. I frowned. That name sounds familiar. Jenna's face went pale. "My first husband." The air in the room turned to ice. I suddenly remembered Preston's cold, triumphant gaze outside City Hall. It wasn't jealousy. It was the look of a man whose conspiracy had succeeded. "They're working together," Jenna said, her voice shaking. "From the very beginning. Julian was the one pulling the strings." I finally understood why Chloe said her father was being held hostage. Julian must have his family, too. The study door creaked open. Poppy stood there, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, I dreamed Daddy turned into the big bad wolf." Jenna rushed over and hugged her, her shoulders trembling. I walked over and wrapped my arms around both of them. "It's okay," I said, kissing the top of Poppy's head. "Daddy Ethan is here. The big bad wolf can't get in." Poppy quickly fell back asleep in her mother's arms. Jenna looked up at me, a vulnerability in her eyes I had never seen before. "Ethan, I think I've really dragged you into my mess." I smiled softly. A little late for regrets, don't you think? I'm serious, she said, her hands gripping my shirt. Julian is 10 times more dangerous than Preston. You can still walk away. I took her hand in mine. Did you forget, Ms. Sinclair? We're married. I wiggled the plain gold band on my left hand, the legally binding kind. Her eyes welled up with tears. It's fake. Some things that are real can't be faked, and some things that are fake, I leaned down and kissed her, can become real. I couldn't sleep. I found Jenna on the balcony, turning her wedding ring over and over in the moonlight. Can't sleep either? I asked, coming up beside her. She didn't look at me. I'm trying to figure out how to beat Julian. I have an idea, I said, pulling out my phone. Connor Croft has a skeleton in his closet from college, and I have the key. Jenna raised an eyebrow. I am listening. He plagiarized his senior thesis, I said with a grin, and I kept a copy of the original. She shook her head. A scandal like that won't be enough to take down L Group. What if you add financial fraud and corporate espionage to the mix? I said, plugging in the USB drive Chloe had given me. Everything on here is enough to put them away for a long time. Jenna reached out and cupped my face in her hand. Ethan, why are you doing all this for me? In the moonlight, her eyes were like two deep pools I could drown in. Maybe, I said softly, I kind of like being Poppy's dad. Just Poppy's? She asked, taking a step closer. I backed her against the railing. And maybe, I kind of like you too. Her breath hitched. Kind of, a lot. I whispered, our noses touching. The kind of lot that makes a guy want to take on the world for you. This time, she kissed me first. The night wind swirled around us, carrying the scent of jasmine. Our shadows merged in the moonlight, becoming one. The next morning, I woke up in Jenna's bed. She was already dressed, buttoning her silk blouse. On the pale skin of her neck, there was a faint red mark. You're awake? She asked, not turning around. I have a meeting with the SEC today. You should. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. Good morning, wife. Her body stiffened for a second, then relaxed into my embrace. Don't get cocky, but in the mirror, I could see she was smiling. At the breakfast table, Poppy looked from me to Jenna and back again. Mommy, you look so pretty today. Jenna choked on her coffee. Eat your eggs. Daddy, Ethan, Poppy whispered, leaning conspiratorially toward me. Did you tell Mommy a dinosaur story last night? A mosquito bit her neck really big. I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Jenna's ears were the color of a ripe tomato. She shot me a look that could kill. The breakfast was chaotic, but it was warm. For a moment, it felt like we were a real family. Then the doorbell rang. It was a courier with a court summons. Julian Croft was suing to have her marriage annulled on the grounds of fraud. He's getting desperate, Jenna said with a cold smile, tearing the summons in half. That means we're doing something right. I put my arms around her waist. What's our next move? Your command is my wish, Mrs. Sinclair Hayes. She leaned back against me and said softly, first we take Poppy to school, and then we go pay Julian a visit. The sun streamed through the window, warm on our backs. The woman in my arms was soft but strong, and in the background, Poppy was humming a tune about a triceratops.